Okay, peeps, welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about Bitcoin and what Bitcoin is doing and where it's going and what could potentially be happening in the next month or two before the halving. So, with that being said, let's get it. So, before we get into the charts, we're going to take a look at a multitude of indicators. So, the first indicator we're going to look at here is the Google Trends on the 5-year time frame. This is for the search term crypto. So, I want you guys to notice something here. During the peak of the last cycle, which was roughly in that May timeframe, we were sitting at about 100. This was back in 2021. And compare this to the charts. You guys can actually let's zoom over a little bit here so you guys can see. We'll go back to the 4-hourly here in a minute, but you guys can see that roughly in that April-May timeframe is when the search term for Bitcoin peaked out, and guess what? We had a massive drop. So that indicates a top for crypto, or basically crypto and or Bitcoin. And then the second peak was in November of 2021, which obviously was another top for crypto. You can see here November 2021. So what is this? What is a signal for us? Basically, this means that because the search term crypto is at a 16 instead of like a 70 to 100, pretty much what that means is retail's not really even in the space right now. The retail FOMO hype, all that stuff is pretty dead right now in the crypto space, which is interesting because if we take a look at the total market cap here of the crypto space, it's sitting at almost $2 trillion on CoinGecko, which is the site we use. It's actually 2.1 trillion. So the institutions obviously have really FOMO'd in. Again, this is smart money. Smart money is buying now while the prices are cheap. And retail generally FOMOs in when the prices get expensive. And because smart money is buying now, when retail eventually gets in, they're going to get their heads dumped on by the whales and the institutions. I cannot guarantee that, but I'm pretty certain that's how it's going to go because I myself understand how smart money, how big money, multi-billion-dollar whales, all that kind of stuff. I know how they move these markets. So these low numbers here indicate that basically we have not even really started the bull run yet, technically speaking. From this indicator, that means that retail is out of this space as of right now, but they will probably at some point come in. So now is still a great time to be getting into crypto and Bitcoin and all that stuff, even though Bitcoin's at 50,000. So here's the search term for Bitcoin, very similar. Basically, take a look at the same thing. You can see that it's not really pulling up that well, but basically this fat candle right here is pretty much the May time frame. That's the first peak, and then this candle right here is it's basically in June. I'm pretty sure people were looking that up because obviously we were at a bottom here. People probably thought that that was the end of the bull cycle, but obviously it wasn't. It went back up. Of course, if you guys follow this channel, you'll know all that kind of stuff going into the bull cycle moving forward. Pretty much we knew that it was not the end of the cycle for a couple of reasons. So if we zoom out here, we'll show you guys on the monthly chart. Sorry about that. So trading view can be a little finicky sometimes, but as you guys see here on the monthly time frame, even though we had this massive drop, we dropped right into this trend line and it did not break the trend line. We did not have a close below. We did not actually get a confirmation of a bear market until this candle right here in December. So even though there was a huge 55% drop, we were like, oh, okay, we'll go ahead and buy back in. So we did, and we made quite a bit of money on the way up. But the reason why we're still bullish here is because we didn't get a candle close below, and you can see this triple what is this called? Triple tweezer bottom here, very bullish. And then, of course, on the weekly time frame, we got another golden cross, which we can look at right here. So you can see this golden cross right here. So this massive dump coming off the May time frame, and then we got the golden cross, and then it was pretty much on after that. But Bitcoin's low number right now would indicate at a 22 versus a 76 and 100 that, once again, retail is not in the space for the most part right now. We are also considered retail. Okay, we're not one of these multi-trillion-dollar institutions like BlackRock or something. Okay, we're just here as retail traders, no different than anybody else. It's just the difference is we're getting in early instead of waiting until the hype is on and then jumping in on the gravy train at the last minute, like most of these retail people will. So this indicates that we're still very early and that crypto has a lot of upside movement to go. So fear and greed, we're sitting at a 74. That's a pretty high reading. I would say based on the historical chart here, we are overdue for a correction. Pretty much every time that we've had one of these massive moves up here, we have had some kind of dump. June 2019, that was the peak of the 2019 mini bull market that we had up to I think it was 13,000 on Bitcoin. You guys that have been in the space for a long time, you'll know what we're talking about. This was the time that Bitcoin broke its previous all-time high. It did have a pullback during that time. This was going into February. As you guys know, between February and March, that was the consolidation on Bitcoin. So we can look at that right here. So you see basically February to May, Bitcoin didn't really do much of anything. And then it did end up eventually dumping by like 50 or 60%. And this is the November peak. This was the final peak or the start of the bear market for crypto. And now we are sitting at a massive record high of almost 80 at this point. So I would say that's potentially a reversal signal. The Bitcoin halving is only 55 days away. Okay, it's scheduled to be April 21st, but of course these things are very fluid. It could happen a couple of days earlier, a couple of days later. This is kind of just the estimate as to when it's going to happen, but it is coming. It's less than 2 months away, so keep that in mind. And do also understand that Bitcoin and crypto doesn't immediately start ripping to the moon right after the halving. Okay, it usually takes like 3 to 6 months after the halving for it to actually start moving up. Not really sure why that is. It's just kind of how it's always worked. So MVRV, basically we're at an 80% discount right now. Obviously the optimal peak here is at 10. The optimal low is at 0. So we're sitting at a 2. That indicates that we're basically at a 2 out of 10 risk. So it's more of a buy zone than a sell zone. It's obviously not perfect. The perfect time would be to get in this green zone, but that has obviously passed us up. So still cheap, but not the cheapest point in history. So the previous peak was at a 7. So if you compare that to the current 2, it basically indicates that we're roughly at about a 70% discount to the previous peak. That's still a good entry point if you ask me. So here's the Bitcoin rainbow chart. The current price is, it looks like in the still cheap zone, so ranging between 49,000 to 64,000. That is accurate. As you guys can see over here, Bitcoin's 51,000. So we kind of estimate, us personally, our personal estimate is that we think, unless of course, Bitcoin does something like the spot gold ETF. After it got approved, gold just went up for like 7 years straight. Again, in a later video, when it becomes more prevalent, we'll pull this chart up. But if Bitcoin does something like that, then obviously we could have like a crazy 5, 7, 10-year bull market straight. We don't know if that's going to happen yet, but based on the cycles, the 4-year cycles that Bitcoin has, we estimate that the top for Bitcoin is going to be somewhere between, or for Bitcoin and crypto in general, is going to be somewhere between October to November of next year. So if we take a look at we'll just say the start of November prices here. So you can see the previous peak landed somewhere in the roughly dark orange to medium orange color. If we take a look at the roughly about early time frame for November here, if we were to get into those zones somewhere, the top would be somewhere between 150,000 to about, I would say somewhere between 150 to about $310,000. We'll go with a conservative estimate, say 150 to 250,000. But of course, BlackRock and Fidelity and all those guys are in the space now, so that could change things. This, assuming that it tops out at $250,000, is to assume that the 4-year cycle remains intact, and we do have another big bear market in basically the end of next year, regardless of them being in space. But only time will tell. So net unrealized profit, it's we're basically in belief and or denial. We did peak last time, roughly just under euphoria and greed. We have not hit that zone yet, but this thing's getting a little frothy if you ask me. Another indication that we might have a potential pullback. Obviously, the cheapest time to get in was in November of 2022. We have gone up significantly since then. The price then was like 16,000. You guys know that Bitcoin's done more than a 3x since then, so do with that what you will. So now The last indicator we're going to look at before we get into the charts is the Pi cycle top. Have we had a signal yet? No, we have not. Generally speaking, if the signal is going to pop up and actually confirm, we would have to wait for the weekly candle to close because these signals do sometimes have fake outs. We would need a confirmation by waiting for the full 7-day candle to play out to know for sure if this thing is going to have an actual cycle top or not. But as of right now, there is no Pi cycle top. So looking at the 4-hourly chart, you guys can see we kind of have this falling wedge pattern here. This is, or a bull flag, however you want to look at it. It's generally a very bullish pattern. We saw something very similar here on this piece back in January. You guys can see that we kind of had like this bullish pennant pattern here, or yeah, I guess it's basically a pennant or a triangle. We had a massive move up, and now we're having another one, another falling wedge. If we were to measure this and say, okay, this thing could move up massively, we'll just go ahead and zoom out real quick. The price target for this, assuming it broke out in the immediate short term, would be roughly about $62,000, almost $63,000 on this target. However, we're going to kind of backtrack our words here for a minute and say that we don't, well, there's a chance there could be a massive dump coming. We'll just put it like that. Even though it looks bullish, we're not necessarily super bullish on this particular price pattern. So we'll get into that in a minute. So you can see the golden cross here, which indicates that if it is going to move up, then it's basically already started its move. As you guys can see, we kind of had like a golden cross back here. You can barely see it back here, but we had like a golden cross somewhere in this zone, and obviously massive move to the upside after that happened. Whether that's going to happen again or not, we'll have to wait and see, but pretty large move, about 23%. So what I did want to share with you guys is that we have taken a $100 position in Bitcoin. So it's a very small position, but basically what we're planning on doing during this bull market is we're going to position trade Bitcoin and Ethereum through the bull market. We're going to put a relatively small initial investment in, and we're just going to trade like the whales do throughout this market. So once we have our positions in and once we've started this, we will update you guys on how we're going to go about doing this. So you can do it if you want to or not. It's entirely up to you, but we're going to do it to accumulate throughout the bull market. So, but as of right now, we're not putting the money in yet because we want to see a drop on the price, which we have not seen yet. So let's go over to the daily time frame. You can see this thing's even more consolidated. Obviously, it looks much, much more like a bull flag now. You have your flag pull here, and then the flag, and then obviously the breakout target would be up here in the middle of this range. But I want to point something out here. So we're still overbought, and we're having this bearish divergence here on the RSI, and we did just have a confirmed MACD death cross on the daily time frame. This is bearish. You guys can see it's way up here too. Okay. So let me catch my breath here a little bit. So you guys we zoom out here a little bit. You can see every time we've had a death cross in recent times, it's led to some kind of pullback. So we had this death cross here. You had a pretty decent pullback, about 17%. This death cross here, it wasn't really much of a pullback, roughly about 5%. This was more of a bearish divergence. So MACD was going down, price was going up. But if we go back even further in history, you guys can see where it becomes really prevalent. So we had a death cross here. This was during the actual bull run. So we had a bearish divergence, basically a higher peak and on the price and a lower peak on the MACD. That was indicative of a dump. And as you guys know, we had a huge dump, roughly about 53%. And you guys can, if you look at the charts, it's obvious. So MACD death cross, another bearish divergence, and then a dump. MACD death cross here, obviously bearish divergence, and then a dump. So the MACD was kind of a lagging indicator, but it was accurate in indicating a massive drawdown in the price of Bitcoin. So this is a little bit concerning. That's why we said we're not super bullish on this pennant pattern right now. So if we go out to the weekly time frame, it becomes much more obvious just how overextended we are. So you can see the price here is really, really getting just out of control here. So we're looking anywhere from a 15 to potentially a 23% pullback just to get back to this support zone here. If we go even further than that, which believe it or not, you guys are probably saying, oh, this can't happen. Oh, yes, it can. Trust me, we've seen it. The price could go down as much as, we'll say it takes a few weeks, as much as 38%, come back and retest this weekly/monthly support trend line here and the zone that we got here, which means Bitcoin could pull back as much to, or as low as 33,000. And obviously altcoins would pull back even more. That would be the perfect dip buying opportunity. But if we go out even further here, you guys can see just how even more ridiculous this is getting. So the monthly time frame is just really, really overextended right now. You can see, just to get back to the yellow EMA is 27%, the blue EMA is 35%, and that's where that trend line sits. I want you guys to keep something in mind too when looking at Bitcoin. So we did have this massive ramp up off of the trend line, but we also had a huge dump. Okay, this was a 50% drop. Massive, massive drop. Okay, 56%. The point I'm making here is that we did end up eventually pulling back into the EMAs, and we did end up pulling back into the monthly trend line. It is going to happen at some point. Okay. And again, here in November, the difference is in November, we obviously very clearly broke it. Here in, I'm trying to see what this month is, but you guys can see we had a immediate 45% pullback. So we broke it in December, kind of chopped around, had this massive range here between about 33,000 to up to 48,000. And then obviously we had our final dump after that point. My point is that there could be a pullback coming at some point soon into this trend line. It could happen anytime between now and I would say probably October of this year. I would say if it's going to happen, it'll probably happen before Bitcoin starts pushing to all-time highs. So keep a lookout for that. There may be a pretty large pullback coming, 20, 30, maybe 35, 40% in the next, probably anywhere between month to, I would say, 4, 5, 6 months. So anyways, this is our weekly update on Bitcoin. Hope you all enjoyed this content. Let us know your thoughts down below. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see y'all later. Peace.